Welcome back to the 14th Jaipur Literature Festival, protected by Dettol, straight from the front lawn of Tiggi Palace. It is our pleasure to present the launch of Mohiniyattam, its art and aesthetics. Bharti Shivaji and Vani Bhalla Pava in conversation with Sanjoy Roy, accompanied by Kalamandalam Sri Kumar. Celebrated classical dancer Bharti Shivaji's recent book Mohiniyattam, its art and aesthetics, is an exquisite journey following the female art form of Mohiniyattam and its style and transformations through the ages. Rooted in research based on sculptures, literary sources, historical references and the Dasi tradition, Shivaji's book explores the intricacies and regional variations of the dance form and the music and rhythm which has come together to mold its legendary tradition. Bharti Shivaji is the founder of the Center for Mohiniyattam. In conversation with Vani Bhalla Pava and Sanjoy Roy, she gives us a glimpse into this evocative art form and how it is understood and appreciated with Vani Bhalla Pava and Kalamandalam Sri Kumar. Bharti Shivaji's pursuit of Mohiniyattam has initiated her into other regional art forms of Kerala, enabling her to imbibe the aesthetics of Mohiniyattam, not in isolation but in significant relation to the interdisciplinary traditions of Kerala, be it sculpture, theatre, music, painting, architecture and literature. Her wide experience led her to choreograph some of the classic plays in theatre like Dhoot Vakyam, the National School of Dramas, Abhigyan Shakuntalam and Vidyotam. She is the author of the books The Art of Mohiniyattam and Mohiniyattam. I'd like to invite Bharti Shivaji to say a few words.
I'll just take a few minutes because it would be necessary for me to give you a very brief introduction about my whole journey. I started as a Bharatanatyam dancer and then went on to Odissi for a while. But when I actually saw many years ago a performance by Mohiniyattam performance by Indrani Rahman, that I was very fascinated. I was completely mesmerized by this dance form and I wanted to learn this. And unfortunately in Delhi there were no Mohiniyattam dancers, so I had to go to Kerala. But it was very, I was lucky to find somebody from, an alumni from Kalamandalam, a very reputed institution from Kerala, who was in Delhi. And when I asked her if she could teach me, so she very unwillingly taught me because she said there was nobody here who was even heard the name Mohiniyattam. This was in the early 70s. And that's how I persuaded her and started learning a few steps and then a few items from her. And that was how I started performing slowly. And there I was very fortunate to be seen by a person none other than Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, who was the president of India International Center, and I was performing there at that time. And she was very next, and she was also the chairman of the Sangeet Natak Academy. And so the very next day I was called to the academy, and she asked me that, we all know her contribution to the indigenous arts that she revived post-independence. So she was saying that she would want to do something for Mohiniyattam. And so she said if she offered me a scholarship to do more research in Mohiniyattam, she will be very happy to include me. And that is how I was so fortunate and blessed to be identified by Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, and I was immediately sent to work with a person, a theatre person. I don't know why she did not introduce me to a traditional guru, but to a theatre person to work with. And so that has been the journey of my life as a Mohiniyattam explorer or an Mohiniyattam practitioner. And it was wonderful to be introduced to, because I don't belong to Kerala. I come from the neighboring state of Tamil Nadu, and so I was totally new to these this Kerala culture, and that's how I started my journey. It was very interesting in the sense that everything was so different from the culture that I came from. And it was wonderful to, I was very fortunate to work with a theatre person called Shri Kavalam Narayana Panikkar, a very well-known theatre personality, a lyricist, a great poet, and he was a great, also a director of a traditional theatre in Kerala. And so it was he who introduced me. He opened the windows. He said, this is how it is. You go to the original sources of Kerala, and this is how you will have to look for yourself, and then come to me how would you want it. And that was the most revealing thing for me, because it was something so totally different for me. The whole atmosphere, the whole culture, the whole regional, the indigenous art forms of Kerala, and the musical traditions, the proto-dramatic, the ritualistic dance forms. I mean, so many of them that one got to see, that I did find that what was being practiced as Mohiniyattam had its own limitations. It was very limited in its repertoire, limited in its technique, and in all its in totality, I saw that it was, as compared to the other art forms of India, like Bharatanatyam or Odissi, it was very limited. But here, after seeing all this in this land, it has tremendous potentials, and it has tremendous possibilities. And that is how I first went around and went about and interacted with the gurus, and then collected some information, something more relevant to Mohiniyattam, and I came about with a new repertoire, a new format, and everything was totally fresh, because I had all the support of Kavalam Narayana Panikkar sir, and it was with that we started our whole work together. And it has been a very fulfilling experience, of course, a very interesting journey, full of challenges and dejections and so many obstacles. But at the end of it all, it was a very fulfilling experience for me. And this book that I have written, this is my third book. And this has already, I mean, it describes the entire, it compiles the entire work of mine, my choreographic compositions and the musical, everything that I had a first-hand experience with the gurus and the practitioners there. And so I have tried to translate that into choreographic compositions, inspired from the literary traditions, the musical traditions, the dance traditions. There are so many of them that they have. And all this, even the sculptures and the historical sources. So all this has helped me to look at these choreographic work, and I came about with a new, fresh ones. And so I'm very happy that part of it will be discussed today while Sanjoy will be introducing this book. And I'm so thankful to be here with you all, and I hope you'll find it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharti ji. Vani Bhallapava is a dancer, columnist and medical fitness specialist. An established Mohiniyattam dancer, she brings a distinct refined sensibility to this traditional dance form. A senior-most disciple of Guru Padma Shri Srimati Bharti Shivaji, she has captivated audiences with her exquisite grace and exposition at the most prestigious venues and festivals nationally and internationally. Sanjoy Roy, an entrepreneur of the arts, is the managing director of Teamwork Arts, which produces over 33 highly acclaimed performing arts, visual arts and literary festivals in 40 cities across the world, including the Jaipur Literature Festival. We now present Mohiniyattam, its art and aesthetics, Bharti Shivaji and Vani Bhallapava in conversation with Sanjoy Roy, accompanied by Kalamandalam Sri Kumar. Over to you, Sanjoy.
Bharati ji, Vani, absolute pleasure to have you both here. I think the minute she sent me this book, I was very keen to look at us having a session on dance writing, because there isn't enough today. There aren't enough writers who are writing critical aspects and historical aspects on India's very diverse dance tradition, not just in the classical space, where there's a number of books, but also in the traditional, as well as now in the growing contemporary space. I keep saying India is one of those few countries where young people even today are still very enthused about going out to learn their Bharatnatyam or their Carnatic violin or their Hindustani classical, not necessarily because they've been subsidized or because it's, they're being forced to do it, but still they feel an intrinsic need to understand their culture and tradition. So thank you very much for writing this book. And before starting, I also want to just pay tribute to Sunil Kothari, one of India's foremost dance critics, who passed away last year. Sadly, Sunil Da was just, the most energetic person, and in any given month he was traversing between Brazil and Ratan Thiam's work in Manipur and all over the world, and writing and posting and taking photographs, as was Asta Debu, who we lost again very recently. So huge tragedies within the dance space, and therefore even more vital and timely book that you've done. Bharti ji, I want you, Mohiniyattam, in your book, you talk about Mohiniyattam being really an 18th century sort of import in many ways, supported by one of the royal families, brought in from another state. Give us a sense of how did Mohiniyattam as a dance form evolve, and then we'll come later to what you've been able to do to it. You'll have to hold it very close.
Yeah. Actually, it is the first reference, the very first mention of the term Mohini we find in the book called Balarama Bharadam, which was also written by the same Balarama Varma, who was also known as Karthika Tirunal. He was the grand uncle of Maharaja Swati Tirunal. And he was a great scholar and a great patron of arts, and he had written this book called Balarama Bharadam, in which he mentions the term Mohini amongst the regional classical, regional dance forms. And Perini, and there are some more names, but Mohini is very prominently mentioned in that. And so that is the first reference, but nothing is known about its technique or its the format or its repertoire or nothing. But later we find the very next reference during Maharaja Swati Tirunal's time, when he, with the help of the Tanjore musicians from the court of Maharaja Sarfochi Maharaja of Tanjore, he invited these musicians to his court, and that is how he wanted to start something like to revive Mohiniyattam. And with their support, he set a certain, he was himself, Maharaja Swati Tirunal himself was a very great scholar and a great musician and a great lover of arts. So he composed some music and dance, music, and with the help of a Devadasi called Sugandavalli, who accompanied Tanjore quartet, who came from Tanjore, and they set this whole repertoire, but it was all based on the Tamil tradition. So it did not have much of the Kerala, culture in it. So it was difficult. It was not very. But then it at least it got revived, and it got patronage, and it had all the support from Maharaja Swati Tirunal, and that's how it survived. But that is the tradition that you see being practiced even now in Kerala.
One of the most interesting things about what Bharati ji has written, she talks about the Devdasi tradition, which we all know about. But what's perhaps unique here is that in this tradition, it was also the women from the royal families who were given to the temple as part of the Devdasi tradition. And within that, they also had sort of different, different classes of yes. people. So tell us a little bit about that.
The reference of the Devadasi tradition one gets from the book called the Suchindram Temple, where in Suchindram, which was again part of Tamil Nadu at that time, it had generally in the southern part of India, or even most of the Indian classical dance forms that we see today, have all evolved from the Devadasi tradition. And more so in the south, where Bharatanatyam, earlier known as Sadir Nrittam, and in Mohiniyattam it was the Devadasis. It is said, but although we do not have any historical record as such, saying that it evolved from the Dasi tradition, but this Devadasi who came from Tanjore was a Devadasi, a Sugandavalli, who was instrumental in dancing whatever was being composed by the Maharaja Swati Tirunal and the Tanjore musicians. So, but then later on, it was only during from the literary works of Kerala, one can see that at one time, Dasi tradition did flourish, because that's what I have mentioned about in my book, and I've mentioned about how the glory of Devadasi is described very beautifully in these chapters. But for me, it was, the moment I saw the Devadasi tradition being flourishing at one time, my mind as a dancer only went to how best we could choreograph it. So that was how I tried to, collect information and bring about a new repertoire and a new format for Mohiniyattam. And so we choreographed something from the mid-15th century, and a text called Chandrotsavam, the Moon Festival. So I just choreographed that for to remind ourselves, to remind the viewers and the art lovers that Kerala did have a Dasi tradition in.
And not only did they have a Dasi tradition, the other interesting thing is that the Dasis themselves had land attributed as part of their income. So it wasn't, as we see it, that they were married off or part of the temple tradition and therefore available for use by the temple. They themselves were fairly wealthy in their own rights.
Yes. They had, at one time, the Devadasi had the equal rights and the equal stature as a Nambudri and as the king of of that region, because she was held in very high esteem at that time. And they were a great lover of, they were great patrons themselves of the arts.
In many ways, those were also the finishing schools of those times.
Yes.
Because you went to the Devdasi to be taught of the nuance and of the rasa which you talked about here so beautifully. But I'll come back to the rasa. I'm going to ask Vani, tell us a little bit about the costume that you're wearing. And we spoke about this yesterday. This is not the Mohiniyattam performance costume, but tell us a little bit about it.
So, as some of you might be aware who've witnessed a Mohiniyattam performance ever, and it's also on beautiful display on the cover of this book, the costume of Mohiniyattam is very evocative and very interpretive of the philosophy of Mohiniyattam, where there is not unnecessary stuff happening, but grace overflows. So our costume is off-white, and typically it's a gold border, but now you also see many variations of colors on the border, but we do not sacrifice the basic body of the costume, which is off-white. Blouse can also be off-white, but it can also be like how I'm wearing. This is not a costume like Sanjoy ji mentioned. This is a Kerala traditional attire that women wear. It's actually a two-piece sari, but something similar you will see where it is gold, and we have a colored border. And like I said, you can either team it up with a colored blouse, but then you will have gold on the sleeves as well, or it could be an off-white blouse. And even the, what shall I say, the accessories that we wear in Mohiniyattam, at least in Bhartiji's style, it is minimalistic because we strive to draw attention to the art form. So the hair is on one side, there's a bun typically on the top, and the flowers that I wear on my hair, that goes around the bun. And we have the toda, so you can have the earring, and typically this will be a little bit larger. You will have a dangler because on stage you also need to cover a much bigger area and your persona needs to be a little bigger than what it is when we are talking. And then you have the neck piece, you have the belt, you will have the bangles, and you will have the rings, and then the anklets. So that is about the costume. I think the simplicity of our costume is also its beauty, and it stands out in stark contrast to any and every other classical style of the country.
That's what they say. It is a provocative simplicity.
Yes.
Provocative simplicity. Bharti, one of the things that's, again, unusual about the Mohiniyattam tradition and a break from, say, Bharatnatyam, which in the last 70 years has moved from the aspect of expression last year to a much more technical dance form, because they were trying to deconstruct it from their earlier tradition, which was the temple tradition. In Mohiniyattam, however, you talk about how much of the tradition is based on the rasya or the expressive part of this beautiful form. And tell us a little bit about that. And I don't know whether you're going to demonstrate a couple of the key ingredients of this.
Mohiniyattam, amongst the South Indian classical dance traditions, it is one of the most graceful dance forms. All because it has the very essence that it originates from is lasya, that is grace. And the predominant mood in Mohiniyattam is Shringara. Shringara, which is again very beauty. And Shringara, so much, sorry. Shringara, so much in its essence that even the technique, even the pure dance movements that you see have a lot of Shringara in it. Right from the very stance, the very look, and the very movement of the neck, everything is very, very Shringara based in Mohiniyattam. And even if there is a composition where the naika, the dancer, has to go to emote various other emotions, she comes back to the Shringara only. So that strong is the Shringara essence in Mohiniyattam. And even the movements are so very soft and gentle, and the rounded movements, it has no aggressive movements at all. The footwork is very, very simple, but because the whole emphasis is given on the body. The torso moving from side to side, and also the movements that are circular, creating circular patterns, and it is an energy which looks very simple but very, very demanding on the body. It's very, very demanding. And now I would like Vani to demonstrate how the body movement is the very, very basic step that is taught to a student.
So before I demonstrate, just a little bit of extrapolation on what Guruji said right now about the technique of Mohiniyattam, and perhaps to answer that question a little more deeply, how does it stand in contrast to the other classical styles? So Mohiniyattam, like she said, looks deceptively very easy. It is anything but. And the challenge lies not in the apparent complexity of the movements that you see, but in also working at multiple layers as a dancer. Lasya, what she spoke about, it is a way of being. It is the edifice. Shringar is just one aspect of Lasya for us. So even when we do the pure dance, and I hope to be able to demonstrate it in a justifiable manner, nobody can of course compare to the way she dances, but even in the pure dance movements, we are never removed, we are never cut off from the bhava or the emotive aspect, and the pure dance sometimes can generate equal, if not more, rasa, or an impulse in the audience as well. So the glances, like how she showed, and because it continuously flows, even in the pauses, there is always a very hint or a suggestiveness of something else which is to come without it being abrupt. So now let's hope that we can show it.
This is the very, very first exercise that is taught to a beginner, person who gets initiated into Mohiniyattam. It is called Mei Varakam. Mei would mean this portion of the torso movement. It is made to move in a circular pattern. This is called Mei Varakam. And before that, I would like to introduce you to Kalamandalam Shri Kumar. He's a very, very senior Edaka player, a great percussionist. And he also plays the Edaka, the Timila is another instrument traditional instrument from Kerala. And they have their own group. And he's been working with me for over, I think, 25 years now. And he's an excellent, very senior artist from Kerala Kalamandalam.
If you can also tell them a little bit about the Edaka, which is quite an unusual percussion instrument with these things from the Duffley tradition.
The Edaka is a very interesting and a very complex instrument because this is perhaps one of the instruments which is permitted inside the sanctum sanctorum of the temples in Kerala. Even today, when you see a singer singing near the what is called the Sopana Sangeetam, the music that is the traditional music that is sung in the sanctum sanctorum, it is always on the accompaniment of the Edaka that the music is sung. And this is called the Sopana system because the Sopana literally means the steps that lead to the deity, the sanctum sanctorum. And that is how this instrument is very privileged. And what is very unique about this instrument is that it can be dismantled, it can be assembled at the time of the performance or the recital. And it is all the musical swaras, the notes, the musical notes, they can be played on this. Even musical compositions are played on the music. And it has a very soft, undulating, movement and the sounds that emanate, and it blends beautifully with Mohiniyattam, the Andolika movements that we have.
Thank you, Kalamandalam ji.
Oh yes, oh yes. This also depicts, oh yeah, this also depicts the 4 Vedas. And also it has, the mouth of the Edekya is covered with inner layer of calf leather. It is so tender, it's very tender. And the color balls that you see hanging, they depict the 64 arts. And this is made of jackwood, that which is used. Yes, yeah, right, yes. No, yeah, you just, right, yes. Yes, 1, 2. Dheem, ta, ta, dheem, ta, ta, dheem, ta, ta, ta. Digi, ta, ta, dheem, ta, ta, dheem, ta, ta, dheem, ta, ta, ta. Digi, ta, ta, dheem, ta, ta, dheem, ta, ta, dheem, ta, ta, ta. Digi, ta, ta, dheem. Ta ta dheem, ta ta dheem, ta ta ta. Digi ta ta dheem, ta ta dheem, ta ta dheem, ta ta ta. Digi ta ta dheem, ta ta dheem, ta ta dheem, ta ta ta. Digi ta ta ta.
Beautiful. Thank you. The eye movement, you just want to sort of talk about a little bit about why the eye movement is so special in this form.
The drishti, as it is known, has a very, very important role to play in expressing abhinaya in Mohiniyattam. Particularly, without the eye movements, it just doesn't convey, it doesn't reach out to the audience. Eye movements are very, kanna sadagam that we call, but it is more elaborate in Kathakali more than in Mohiniyattam that you see, because it is the body movement as we have in Mohiniyattam technique is divided between the abhinaya, the body movements, the footwork, everything. In Kathakali it is mostly only the mukha abhinaya. So it is mostly about the facial expressions. But here, and it's also exaggerated. In Mohiniyattam, we don't have that. Yeah, it's very suggestive.
I know we have 10 minutes left, and I want to share some of the contemporary work that you've done. But before that, because much of the book is also talked about the mudras that you've used in Mohiniyattam, I'm wondering whether you wanted to just use the mic to show us 2 or 3 of the mudras that you've talked about, the 2 or 3 different forms of the mudras that you've talked about in the book.
The mudras of Mohiniyattam are generally taken from a text called the Hasta Lakshana Deepika, where there are so many 24 mudras, the single hand gesture and the double hand gestures. And the mudras also play a very important role in conveying a story, depicting a certain mood and a certain expression. So it is, the mudras have a very, but as I said, it's not just the mudras. In Mohiniyattam, it is always divided between the facial expressions, the body movements, and the mudras, which convey a lot, and it plays a significant role, no doubt about it. And certain movements one can show, like...
The thing about the mudras in Mohiniyattam will be that to go with the style, because as you would have seen, it's very rounded in nature. So you will never find our mudras also being very taut. So if it's a similar mudra which is in Bharatanatyam, in Mohiniyattam we would probably hold it like this. There is a lot of clarity, but there's a little softness about the same mudra that we would hold. So this is Bharatanatyam, whereas in Mohiniyattam it would be this. It'll be just a gentle flick of the wrist. So there'll be minor changes, but these minor changes contribute immensely to the mood and vocabulary of Mohiniyattam.
Bharati, one of the most interesting shows that I've seen, or the two interesting shows that I've seen that you've created, both contemporary. One was using the work that Sudeep had done, Sudeep's poetry that you used to create a whole piece. And the other was when I saw Swan Lake, I mean, did Swan Lake Mohiniyattam style, which was the most lyrical Swan Lake performance one has ever seen. And I think the first time we took it was to Edinburgh, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes.
And the critics there, they couldn't get over the fact that here was this very classical dance form in traditional classical costuming. And when the swans came in their white saris, in this beautiful S form, there was a standing ovation at the end of that piece. So, what got you to start looking at contemporizing Mohiniyattam, which was again, in the larger dance context, this is not a natural thing to do, because many critics sort of have questioned as to whether this is a good thing or not, or the work that you did based on Sudeep's poetry.
It was basically both these productions are Vijay Lakshmi's creative work, I must say, because she was the one who she's been trying to convince me, because I was very tradition bound. I was actually trying to understand the actual tradition of the Mohiniyattam, because that was what I was going completely going to the original sources and firming up the traditional values of Mohiniyattam. But she took it ahead. She wanted to try with pan-Indian and global music, and which was a very something which I was not very ready to, but we used to have very heated arguments over it. I said maybe we could have some Indian music along with it, but she said certainly not. How do we say Western classical music is not classical? So let us try with Mohini. It very beautifully flows together, both the mood, that is. And that is how it was her baby, and it was her choreography, and it was so fortunate that we were invited to perform at the Bolshoi Theatre. And in fact, I remember very distinctly when after the lunch there was a speech by the culture minister of Russia at that time. And but this was again what inspired Vijay Lakshmi was that when we went to Soviet Union in '87, so that was where she just she heard the music and she got very inspired, and she wanted to do this in Mohiniyattam.
So we're going to hear online. You're now going to see Vijay Lakshmi speak to us.
I feel very grateful to have a guru and mother like Bharti Shivaji, who enabled me to imbibe the essence of Mohiniyattam, and which then enabled me to explore and add new dimensions to the dance form. My earliest production was Unni Archa, which I did 20 years ago, and which was inspired from the story of a woman who lived in Kerala over 350 years ago. She was a traditional woman with a mind of her own, and I thought her story really resonated with the woman of today. The entire production was based on Kalaripayattu, the ancient martial dance form of Kerala. My next big production, and probably the most well-known, has been Swan Lake, inspired from my performance tour of the USSR in 1987 along with my guru. I never imagined that 18 years later I would create an entire production inspired from the great Tchaikovsky's ballet of Swan Lake. It was a great honor to be invited that very year to perform at the Bolshoi Theatre and later at the St. Petersburg Conservatory, where Tchaikovsky himself studied music. It's gratifying that the production is not just a landmark in Mohiniyattam, but has come to become a milestone in the realm of Indian classical dance as well. Another prominent production of mine was Paryapti, inspired from the Durga Puja concept of Bengal. It was a very, very powerful example of the inclusive aspect of the sacred feminine, and it was my tribute to all the marginalized women of society. And it tied in very well with the sacred feminine aspect of Mohiniyattam itself, the dance form being rooted in the sacred feminine. And one of my other major productions has been Rain, inspired from the internationally acclaimed Indian poet Sudeep Sen. And this was an Indo-US production where the artistic director was LA-based artist Sarah Bauer, and the music was done by very, very eminent Hollywood and Emmy awardee Mac Quayle. And the Rabindra Sangeet segment was sung by me. So the biggest endeavor on my part has been to really demolish these limiting stereotypes associated with both the dance form and femininity in general. And it is with that objective that I have set up the Mohiniyattam Institute in Los Angeles for audiences and students of dance to discover and experience and enjoy the beauty and power of Mohiniyattam.
What I'd love you both to do is just end with either a demonstration or of a story, any story that you want to, a sentence of a story.
This is an extract from Geeta Govindam, which is generally sung in the temples of Kerala. And and I have tried to introduce that in the Mohiniyattam repertoire, and perhaps for the first time it was being done. And this describes the beauty of Krishna, that he has smeared the whole chandanam, the chandan, all over his body, and he's got a garland of wild flowers, and his body is blue like the sky. That's what I depicted.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bharati Shivaji, Vani, Kalamandalam, thank you so much for this beautiful, beautiful session, and best wishes to continue to do these wonderful performances. But thank you so much, and thank you for doing everything that you've done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharti ji and Vani and Sonjoy, for that exquisite session. Thank you so much for allowing us a window into the intricacies and variations of Mohiniyattam and its music and rhythm. We'd also like to thank our partner Diageo for their support. And thank you all for watching and being a lovely audience. Please do remember to pick up your copy of the book from our Amazon bookstore. Please do stay logged on to continue to watch with us a series of exciting sessions that we have curated specially for you. We'd love your support towards Teamwork Arts to ensure a free and seamless flow of knowledge. Please do remember to tweet using hashtag Jaipur Literature Festival 2021 and do tag us at Jaipur Lit Fest. The festival is protected by Dettol. We do hope to see you in our next session.